performance poet, I'd have remembered it all, but then I wouldn't have written that down in the first place if I could remember it. One called Statuesque. You might call it Bohemian Wrath, possibly. Mid-afternoon in Karlovy Valley. We've been here an hour, tired and hungry off the slow Prague train, long enough to leave bags down and drink some tea. The sign says Star Club. We recall the clubs in Prague near the Zizka monument were daytime cafes too. Communication is stalled between Pete and I. He sits on the car park gravel, while I go in with my German language memories. The door clicks shut behind me. You Sexy Thing blares from speakers over the stairs. I'm sure there was nothing playing till the door clicked shut. I enter into huge empty club space. Pseudo-suave pastels and not much else, but a woman sitting at a bar facing me with paperwork open in front of her. We nod to each other in an international language. Do you have any food? Take a seat, please. 12 young beauts appear in leotards striking sexy pouts and poses. I'm in need of a different sort of oral experience. One of them's mouth does a downward curve as I escape toward the stairs. Pete remains stone-faced when I tell him. Moving on to Berlin, this is called Zoo, or Zoo, if you like. Zoo, perhaps. Zoologische Hauptbahnhof, the main station, which you two got some mileage out of. Zoo, 1983. At the flea market outside the student canteen, I find an Indian kurta, a thin Indian shirt with purple trim. A guy with pleading eyes seemed to follow me around Zoologische Garten Hauptbahnhof, Zoo train station. He could have been a gay spy. He wouldn't be the first one, I thought, with worldly savvy. I'd seen it all in the cinema. He followed me along the dual platforms and down again, through the shops. I threw him dagger eyes which seemed to fix his determination. I told my brother at his flat about my sharpness. He smiled and said, "You probably thought you were playing hard to get." He laughed uproariously until it hurt both of us. Purple was the German pink, apparently. I thought I'd read that because I've never read that before in public. And 1983, and coming from provincial Liverpool, any kind of gay issues or anything like that was barely discussed. It's a bit of historical document. Still in Germany, this one's called Scab. I'd hitched from Berlin to Munich to find work. The whole city was on strike over working hours. All that is but a few employers. Brian was cleaning the showers at the campsite I was staying at, and he said he could tell me what else was going. He seemed shy. He never gave direct eye contact. He was from Lowestoft. One chance for work was to be a Versuchskaninchen, trials rabbit, literally, or guinea pig for a multinational drugs company. They put people up to 2-week trials with meals and board and a good wage for passive, unskilled work. The others were usually a good laugh, he said, looking away. I wasn't sure about working for a multinational, and I worried out loud about possible health risks. "Well," he said, looking at me this time, "I've been doing it every summer for 3 years now, and there's nothing wrong with me." That was when I noticed his eyes. One was striking bright blue, the other green. Not only that, some of his freckles looked like cockroaches. Scab. I nodded, fixed to the spot by those eyes. I couldn't bring myself to ask him what they'd been like before he'd done test work. This one's called Grapefruit. The receptionist at the Venice hostel was called Maria. Though she was Italiana, her hair was red and wild and she had blue eyes. She'd gone swimming at the Lido on my first full day, and I missed her as I tramped around yet more sights in the midsummer heat. I'd been there less than a week. The situation between us was impossible. She was talking of Quito, Jakarta and Osaka as possible places to live in next. Now it's definitely Europe-based. I went out to the market to get some amaretto to take home. The sky was overcast. The guys in the supermarket were rushing to close early, so I grabbed some food in the bottle with my last few euros. I took my time getting back to the hostel. It was less than 10 minutes away. People were rushing as though their lives depended on it. A strong aversion to getting a little wet, I thought. The air was cooling fast around me and was still. I was back inside the hostel door 10 seconds before the downpour. I heard it kicking the roof in as I ran upstairs. Maria was busy with punters, but I was glad that she was back. She knew it was impossible. I could tell the way she looked away. I went for a shower. When I came back to the room, the other occupants were all there, the shutters swimming like some half-familiar fruit. I tried to secure them, but the wind was too much on them. I went to bed with the shutters banging away. I managed to shut out their noise by thinking of Maria. The next day I squeezed a farewell hug out of her. With our height difference, she said, "I could peck you on the cheek, or somewhere rather. How about Bristol?" It had all been said. It could not be done. As I walked to the station, I saw the local paper at the newsstand. There were photos of hailstones the size of grapefruit, like the ones that had killed 8 people the previous year. It's true as well, these are all true. This was called Carly's domain. She lay writhing on the street untouchable, an old mother dying. Her mouth was full of flies, and a small crowd gathered round her, pointing and smiling. The humour was human, it was not at her expense. My Hindi was adequate, just to discern it. See how struggling is always present, even now as Carly comes to her. She would have had an hour or so to live. An hour later, down narrow alleyways, I searched out a makeshift toilet. I turned a corner onto a kennel full of pups, wagging their tails all around it, and stopped. My calf had been torn by their mother, blood had been drawn. Back in my part of Benares, where the Westerners lived, music students told me that to ward off death from rabies meant getting injected within 10 days, a week now. In Kathmandu, only 3 days before, a monkey had bit my shoulder. I entertained death for 5 days. A Westerner told me of a local man who had died rabidly. His brothers had boarded his windows and doors, leaving meals for him under the door. He bashed himself into the wall. I recalled asking a white-bearded man as I ran into Bangalore station what the time was. He stopped and stood still and put his bags down. I struggled to slow down to listen. Taking the beady little cigarette from his mouth, he looked upwards and said, "Time," as I ran for my train.